Shoma Mitra and Samina Gupta and myself, Cam Agarwal. Nerissa, my first question is to you. Um, something that really kind of was close to my heart as I was reading your story is when you mentioned that God gives its most challenging battles to his strongest soldiers. And I feel like your story was full of inspiration, that you were always seeking knowledge, always seeking growth, always trying to find what was within you, the bigger why. And I wanted to see how you see yourself as a soldier, and what prepared you for all the challenging battles that you had to face in life.
Oh, that's a nice question. Thanks, Cam. So sometimes I don't like to use the word soldier also, but that was a quote that I took because so I don't like to use the word soldier too much because soldier means fight. And sometimes I don't think it is a fight as much as a surrendering. And when you surrender, it does not mean you give up or you give in. It just means you let go. And when you let go, then things happen. And I have seen that happen in my life. How do we prepare for this? I think life is the biggest teacher, and the one that prepares us the most. Just living life really is our biggest preparer for it.
I'm in awe with your inspiration to just continue to keep growing and learning. Like, right from childhood, you pursued music, and then you went far ahead and not only won every local but state and national competitions. To you went to study abroad to study music further. And even though when you later on settled in a comfortable family life, you pursued you pursued education, you pursued knowledge, you pursued self discovery, and you found yourself as a student again in your 40s. And oftentimes, women feel that, now that have a family, they have kids to think of, they often lose themselves in that journey. What
Yeah, you
what
hit the nail on the head.
Yep.
You've
And
absolutely hit the nail on the head there.
so I wanted to ask you, what is your message to the women out there, and especially the women who don't even realize that they're losing themselves, they're losing their identity, they're losing themselves in the societal structure of what is expected out of them, that you're a
Yes,
mother now, you have kids now, you have a family to take.
yes. So absolutely, Cam. Yeah.
Before you
Well,
answer, for 1 second, Shoma, you're not recording.
so do you want me to answer this
Yeah.
question now? Of course, I know you let it. So, Cam, that is so, like I said, you hit the nail on the head. But before I go on to answer your question, I want to just tell you one thing. My mother lost her father when she was very young. My grandmother didn't work, and she had her children to bring up without my grandfather. But there is one thing my grandfather apparently told her was, make sure that your daughters are educated. Don't think about them getting married first. First, think about their education. If they have a good education, they will be able to stand on their own 2 feet, and they will be able to look after themselves. And that also stayed with me, because I think that when you educate yourself, whether it's formal or informal, you grow. And when you grow, you allow everyone around you to grow. um, so I have seen that happen in my life. I think that I went back to studying because I was feeling this inner desire to help my students with something I was not helped with before. And when you have something greater than you, a greater purpose, you will do whatever it takes. It was not easy. Um, so, Yeah, so, and the other thing that you said was about women, when they get married and they have their children, they sometimes put themselves on the back burner and they lose that inner flame, that passion that they had, the dreams they had at one time. And I'm hoping that this story will say, it doesn't matter what age you are, where you are in your life, whether you've got one child or you've got four children like me, if there is something that pulls your heart and you want to do it, go ahead and do it. It's not going to be easy, but go ahead and do it.
Beautifully said. Life, age is not a barrier. Where you are in your stage of life is not a barrier. How many kids you
Yeah,
have, what circumstances you have is not a barrier. If you are a
yeah,
seeker of knowledge, you will go ahead and
yeah.
what it
I
takes.
wanted to add one more thing to that because yesterday, no, actually, yesterday she said, my student sent me the message, but this morning I was teaching her and we had a chat. So she is a teenager and she has also got her own podcast with teens. And she said, can I interview you? Here are my questions. I'm like, okay, but after I finish the other interview with my group of women, I will answer your questions. The point is, and I want to say this because in the Indian society, we always put engineering, being a doctor, being a lawyer up on the pedestal. Anyone else is not good enough. And she said, I want to interview you because, and amongst others, to show that if you are following your passion and you're doing what you're doing and enjoying what you're doing, don't worry about the money. But there are many more career options and a diversity in options, and she wanted to she's her point is to interview people from different walks of life and just show that to the teenagers that she is within her school. The diversity, you don't have to just be where society says this is what you need to do and this is the only good way and the only way to go. Yeah.
That really leads so lovely into my question, Nerissa. So, I know that anyone reading this book is going to attract women who want to have wings. Obviously, the name of
Yeah.
the book, and your story from from a very young age, where you even went to London when you were 18, I think. Is that right?
I
On
was
your own?
20, yes, but in those
Okay.
days, 20 was like now the kids are traveling at much younger ages, but in those days, not many people traveled. And at 20, I hadn't even stepped on a plane. We couldn't
Yeah.
afford a ticket to go. So 20 was when I had just finished university. I hadn't even waited to get my certificate, but I was on that plane and had never stepped on a
And
plane before in my life.
And then you spent 3 years in London following your
Yes.
passion. So, following on from what you just said about how we're always encouraged to take those traditional careers, and in fact, creativity is put aside, or we're told to just take it as a hobby, or even drop it as a hobby because
Yes.
it's wasting time, or moving away from. My daughter's very very much about creativity, creative, and she
Mm.
just dwell in that, and I can see society already pushing her away from that.
Yeah.
So for you, you obviously had a natural talent, and I can see your piano in the back, and I wish you could just jump on there and play us some tunes. So anyone who wants to find your music, hopefully I'm sure you've got some stuff on YouTube.
Yes, I
Um,
do.
Brilliant. I would like to ask you about desires, because so many of us has probably got suppressed desires, and as we grow older, maybe they're starting to bubble up a little bit more. Maybe even as our kids grow older and they leave the home, we start realizing we're not in love with our jobs or whatever we've been doing all these years. How would you say to anyone who's reading or listening to this interview, go for it? Like at the age of 40, you went to university. What does it take? What does it take for a person to follow their desire?
Yeah, so when you say desire, I am thinking also of intuition. And I
Mm,
think us as women, we have a stronger connection to intuition. We always, talk about the mother's instinct, the mother's intuition, more than the men. I do not know the data whether that is, true or not true, but I do know that I've experienced it, and many women who I speak to have also said that, their intuition is very, very strong. So whether it is intuition, for some people, it may not be. This is the way I see it. Intuition is something that is inside, right? It could not necessarily be a feeling. For some, it could be a feeling. For some, it could be a hearing. For some, it could be just knowing. For some, it could just be a gut instinct. And it is, if you, so your question was, how can we, how, you know, what is the tip I would give someone? I would say, first, be aware of it. And to be aware of it, you need to tune in. We're just so tuned out, we're so zoned out, that unless you tune in and you are aware, you will not know what you're feeling. Otherwise, it will just go, you know, as, who cares about that sort of thing. So the first thing is to be aware of it, to be aware of that feeling, and that feeling comes. And it was a feeling, I still remember that feeling. And I remember that feeling. Actually, my mother had just passed away, so I was already mourning a lot. I didn't show it, but I was. And my father was just diagnosed with cancer. So, but I had this instinct to you know, study. And in my story, you will read of how I was, you know, taking my books to India whilst looking after my family here, flying down to India for the weekend, going to see to my dad, taking my books to the hospital. At one point, my dad even had lost his memory. And I was with a night lamp sitting and studying, but the night lamp shadows were reflecting on the ceiling. And he was trying to catch those images that he saw, but I had to switch that off so that he would sleep. And I told my professor, I said, you know, I've always given up every assignment, but I cannot give this one up. And that was the final assignment for year 2. He said, Nerissa, he said, my mother is ill. I'm in the UK and trying to manage her. You are managing 2 families on 2 sides of the Arabian Sea. Just don't give up your assignment. You do it whenever you want. I'm putting you straight into year 3. And when you come for the final, you know, the gathering that we used to have in the UK, and you can submit your assignment whenever you want. But I do remember that feeling that, yes, this is something I need to be doing, and I would do whatever it took to get my work done. The second thing I would say is, the first one was to be aware. And the second one, so when you're aware, you have that thought that comes in, but immediately when that thought comes in, for me this happened, we have an inner critic and it still happens, you're not good enough. Who do you think you are? What will other people say? And this happens, so this is my experience as a performer. As a performer, we're always being judged. We're always out there pouring our souls out when we play the music or whatever it is, that, you know, for me, it's being a musician. And you're always being judged. You're always thinking, not good enough. What are they going to say? And we got to silence those. So I had to silence a lot of my inner voices, the inner critic in me. There was self-doubt. There was, do you think I can do it? Do you think I'm going through a midlife crisis? I'm 40. Well, you know, what are you thinking? 40 years old and you're going back to uni. It was really hard. But those are the 2 things I would say. Be aware of that feeling, that intuition that you get. It may not always be a feeling. It could be a thought. It could be an image. It could be a sound. It could be something, but you will feel it and you'll know it when you feel it. And the second thing is to, to silence your inner critic. And sometimes it could be silencing an external critic as well. Fortunately,
Wow.
I was very lucky. I mean, I'm fortunate. My husband and my children are very supportive. So I didn't have any external critics. I just had the internal ones that I had to work on. It's sometimes maybe the harder ones.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Just those 2 steps, I can imagine, you know, the third step would be just going for it, which is great. You know, just dealing with those 2, I feel like that's going to allow some of us to just go for it. So thank you. Thanks for sharing. And your story really, you know, for me personally, it was one of those stories where I just thought, gosh, this is like, she's just making it sound so easy and just doable. I'm going to try.
Yeah, but
I'm just going
it
to go
wasn't, Samina. But you know, as women, we
yeah.
do. I mean, I'll tell you that with 4 children, life did take over. You know, so it wasn't easy. It was hard, but you just know that it's worth it in the end.
I know.
Yeah.
You know, it's that leads so beautifully to what I wanted to ask. I know that you're a voracious Nerissa. And you practically read every book on the planet, at least every one I hear of, you've read. And you've just, told Samina that you have to tune in, absolutely, and be aware of what you want. And at the same time, there's a lot of women who are trying or want to be like you. I can imagine there's lots of people who have these inner desires. They're in a family situation or in a work situation where they've been limited by the circumstances, but they know they've got immense possibilities, that they can go out and do it. And yet we stop ourselves. I've done it to myself. I've self-sabotaged myself, thinking, how am I going to leave my family? Who's going to look after the kids? If I go away, for simple things like a writing retreat that I wanted to do for years, I've never ever done it because I think, who's going to look after these people? What I want, what I'm asking from you is, how did you resolve that inner critic within you and, step up and actually manage to go away? Because you've done a wonderful thing, and this is, your children are learning from you. So what would you say to other women who are limiting themselves?
Yeah, Shoma, my internet was a little unstable, but I did get the gist of your question.
Oh,
I think it was about, sorry, just correct me if I'm wrong, so I don't, go off on a tangent. You want me to address how do women follow this desire even though they've got responsibilities at the home? Is that what you
yes.
meant?
So yeah, we limit ourselves with our own beliefs, right? um,
Yes.
and you have to step over that. So, what is your message to people who are in this position, who want to go out and do things, get things, they know that's possible, but their limiting beliefs, their family circumstances, all these things are stopping them? How
Yeah.
would you tell them to go forward?
Yeah. So I've been through this myself, Shoma, as a performer, as a mother, and even as a teacher helping other children. And in my own life, I know that I too have had loads of limiting beliefs. I self-sabotage all the time. And so how do I deal with it is, again, first becoming aware. I think awareness is the biggest. If A is the first letter in the alphabet, awareness has to go with it. As soon as you become aware, then you realize, or let me say, I realize, I ask myself this question: is this limiting belief coming from, I'll just say, where is it coming from? Find out where is it coming from. Sometimes it can go back to something someone has said which affected me, or maybe happened as an incident in my life. Most often it's childhood. And then I question the belief. As soon as I question that belief and I, just knock it on its head, turn it around, I just become more empowered then. So, I mean, it's actually, I'm just gonna, all the questions that you guys have asked me have all been so linked, because Cam's question initially was, gosh, I've lost my track, but I do, you are going to edit this, I know that, so that's fine. But anyways, it's all linked to life. Life was, yes, Cam says life was your greatest teacher. And the second one was, becoming aware, and then following your intuition, which led to, sometimes that intuition says something, that voice says something, but then the other voice pulls you back. So I see that, the whole relation to all these questions now. And I normally sit in the night before I go to bed. I do, my husband knows this. I've got, like, first of all, books all around me, papers all around me. And again, he tries to get me to go digital, but no, I'm paper and pen. So I will sit with my papers, and I will do a to-do list for the next day. And I don't always accomplish everything on my list, but I do have that list. And I also have the not to do list, which I'm sure all you lovely ladies also do. The to do list. I can see Cam smiling as well, and everyone's nodding. Yes, the to do list and the not to do list. Because sometimes I used to be that one who was not only uh, who had my own list of things to do, but I would never remind myself of what not to do. And I was always doing more, and I was afraid of burnout at some point. So to keep that balance, I had to make sure that there was a to-do list and a not-to-do list. So juggling, Shoma, coming to your question, juggling 4 kids with, doing everything that I had to do, teaching and my assignments, going back to uni after, at the age of 40, plus everything had changed from the time I was in uni, which was 20 years ago before that, right?
Yes.
So I had a whole new way of learning, which scared the hell out of me. It really did, because I'm like, oh my goodness me, what am I going to do? How am I going to manage? And then I had to prioritize, and I had to be organized with my time and with my energy. And that's what came first. And I also think that I think women also need to be a little bit mindful that when you're going for your own needs, you don't do that at the expense of others. Because we are moms, most of us, I think, in this group are moms. And we need to also be responsible and work ethically towards who we are caring for. Because then you're sending the wrong signal if you're just doing only you and you're being only selfish and only trying to get your career sorted out at the expense of your husband and your children. So it was always this juggling act between, the children, the husband, and my own thing. So I think you need to also be mindful of others that you're living with, not just be selfish and think, okay, this is what I need to do and this is for me. When I told my professor once that when we were in the UK, and I said something that, well, sometimes I do the best to get all my assignments done on time and submit it. But I said sometimes I don't answer all the questions. I said the reason being is because I'll be sitting on my bed with my books, doing my research, trying to write. But if my child walks into the room and asks me a question, I'm putting my books aside and answering that question. So I had to be mindful of that, because they were teenagers at the time when I was this thing. And if I every time was going to be only focused on me and only focused on my studies and only focused on what I wanted to do, they would stop coming into my room at some point and say, well, mom's not even listening. She's not even answering my questions. So I would just leave everything there and answer their question and also communicate with them. So my whole point is that, yes, all of us are so powerful. We are so capable of achieving everything, but not at the expense of others, in my opinion.
And did that put any undue stress on you? That you have to complete an assignment and you're being pulled in every direction.
Yes.
That's something that often happens to me, that when I'm on a deadline and everybody else has different needs, and I'm trying to stretch myself, pulling all-nighters and finishing edits while someone is sick, or
Yeah.
did that?
It happened, yes. When you said someone was sick, because I do remember even taking a picture, because we were studying from all over the world. There was someone in Greece, there was me, there was from the UK, we had about 3 or 4. From Brazil, we had someone, and we had from the Czech Republic. So we were all sitting and studying at all different times of the night and day, depending where we were. And I remember one of my kids was sick at that point. And I'm like, oh, I'm sitting in, my child's on my lap, and I'm sitting in, doing my work. You just got to do it, I guess. And then, this also comes back to everything we've been discussing. Awareness, intuition, feeling. Women will just know. I think sometimes you will know. And if you listen to it, you'll know whether you have to see to that child first or whether you need to see to you first. Sometimes you need to see to you first.
Yeah.
And because the child could just be, being really stupid, which they are sometimes. They're just demanding. And you should know whether you need to look after them or you. But you'll know when the child is sick, it's not you. You have to see to the child then. So, yeah.
One of the best advice I got from a coach, one of my coaches once, which I appreciate so much, was I had younger kids, and she said, when your kids are young, just take it slowly. just do it, but do it slowly and accept that, you know, you have different limitations. My kids are older, I have more time, but you must realize that. And I feel like, going back to your point about self-awareness, if we accept our situation and we understand, yeah, we don't want to give up, but we'll go slower, and we'll make sure we're moving slowly but surely in the right direction. You know, we talk about,
Absolutely, yes.
yeah, and that's what you're
Yeah,
saying, which I love.
it is absolutely
So
true, because the awareness is first and then acceptance is the second thing. Accepting what
Yeah,
is in front of you at that moment.
it's
yeah,
Because each of our moments and each of our lives are so different, but what is in your moment is not from my moment. So even though we are all sitting here and giving our stories, it's for the woman who's reading it to know what is in her life at that moment,
yep,
and
exactly.
then make her decision based on her situation.
Yeah.
That's where awareness and acceptance absolutely, go hand in
absolutely.
hand. Yeah.
There's so much being said here that resonates so deeply with me because I often find myself, and I kind of heard it somewhere, we as women are juggling so many things. And Nerissa, you so beautifully put it in your chapter as well. But one of the things I find is like if you're juggling, you have your family, your kids, your career, your learnings, and everything you're juggling, your household responsibilities, the most of those balls and that are up in the air and you're struggling always catching one and throwing the other in the air, the family and the kids are actually made out of glass, so you really have to really balance those really well. And it's my own personal struggle as well in the quest of doing what you want to do or what you want to accomplish. There have been some cracks, and I sometimes have to go back and reflect on, out of all these tasks that I'm juggling, what is most important, and really
Yeah.
find that balance within. That's a struggle for every woman. The other
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
the other thing that resonated was, I myself growing up, we talk about these beliefs. These beliefs come from the voices that become internal voices, but the internal voices are very directly connected to what we've been told throughout life. What we are told is the right thing to do. Growing up, I remember I wanted to be a dancer, but women of respectable families in my family was not considered to pursue that as a career. It's someone we pay to bring on when we have a function, a family function, a wedding or something, right? It's not something you pursue as a career. I wanted to be a news reporter. No, women of respectable families don't do that, even though that's a really, I feel it's a really great profession to be in. You had to be a doctor or an engineer, and even to seek, I am an engineer by profession, but even that manifested because there was a women engineering college that just opened up. There were so many constraints, such a box that is put around you, and you can do everything, you can fly as long as you are within the box. Like, the moment you start leaving that box is when questions arise and when you're told to, so I feel like I myself look at things and I never thought there were possibilities to question those beliefs. Like,
Yeah.
and as you grow, as you learn, as you experience the world, that's when you start to have those desires. Yes, I think it was I remember Kiran Bedi, she's like a top level police official in India, one of
Yeah.
the first females to have that. And I was very fortunate that in our school, they had her come over as an inspirational speaker. And when you're young, you're hearing all these voices and they inspire you. And I'm like, yes, I want to do something. I want to be in a profession that hasn't been yet touched or felt like is the right thing for a woman to do. But again, then you get inspired and then you get back home and then you find yourself in the same box. And I think
Yeah.
it takes a lot of internal searching. It takes a lot of growth to actually question that, to be in a position to question that, right?
Yeah.
And then now that I'm a mother, and I we don't live in the Indian, very we're not in India anymore to say, but yet I feel that the Indians in the American culture, even here, we box our kids still. And there are times I reflect on, like, am I boxing my kids by this belief? Still the career of choice continues to be for the families who've immigrated here and have settled here for
Yeah.
the longest time. When they
Yeah.
want, what they want for their kids is still be a doctor, be an engineer, be a
Exactly.
financial person, be something. Education and it takes over creativity. It's as if no other professions exist. So
Yes.
I question what words of inspiration and wisdom can you give to each individuals. How can we help so
Yeah.
those desires are not curbed right in the beginning?
So, yeah, that is so good. That is so good, Cam. I mean, it's everything we've been discussing. I think the whole book that with all the women and their inspiring journeys that they've had. I'd say there are two things that I would that come to mind right now. The first one is addressing your question about juggling. We're always juggling, and yes, life is so fragile. I don't think we ever get a balance because every moment is different. Um, my problem, I'd say, my personal problem was perfectionism. And I had to let go of perfectionism because we were brought up with perfectionist attitudes with classical music, especially classical music. And I'm talking Western classical music, that's what I studied. So when we performed, till now, even till now, some of the major examining boards, the first thing is notational accuracy. How accurate are you with your notation? Okay, yes, it is important. I know it is important because without the right notes, you don't have the right music. But we pressurized ourselves so much about perfectionism that transferred into everything in my life. I had to let go of a lot of the perfectionist attitudes, and perfectionism actually is a fear. It comes from fear. It's not really, is like we all know Tony Robbins says that, is the worst standard to have. Perfectionism is the worst standard to have because it actually comes from fear. Fear of whatever you want to, fear of not good enough, fear of whatever, okay? And all of those also come from your beliefs. So when it comes to juggling, I had to let go of a lot of perfectionist attitudes that I had from wherever and just accept. Um, you used the word twice. You said inspirational and you said inspire. That word, a quick Google search, I'm sure, because I know I've done this Google search before, would say that inspire comes from the Latin word which means to breathe. We have one life to live. And if we are not putting that breath into something that makes a difference either to us, and of course I know if it makes a difference to us, it is making a difference to the others, then, what is this life for? So we have to find that inspiration. Sometimes it's from outside, but it will be the breath that you put into that action, into that something. For me, it was education, helping my students and helping the women that I help to do exactly this, to tune in and to find that hidden light, especially as moms, which we've just kind of put under the bushel, and it's just dimmed so much after all the children and everything, to find that, to reignite that, and to, whatever many years we have left, just to go for it. So, Shoma, in fact, does the timeline. You put the 5 years on your timeline. And then on the top of the timeline, you have all your positive experiences, and on the bottom, you have all the negative experiences. And when you look at that timeline as that straight line, and you think, well, this is my age, that's what I did from 0 to 10, from 10 to 20, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70. We don't know how long we have left. Well, my great grandmother lived till 103, so if I live till then, I better be doing something really good to, make the rest of my life worthwhile. But the point is that we don't know how long we have. In the virus, the coronavirus that we have all lived through, has shown us that life is too short. It's too fragile. We got to let the bullshit go. Let those limiting beliefs be where they should have been in the past, and not bring it with us to the future. Change it now. And when we change, I just feel that we have changed generations from the back, and we're changing generations in the future just by us changing now and making those choices now.
Beautifully said, Nerissa. And it's like change begins with one person. One person. It's that one little tiny ripple that you can
Yeah.
feel the effect all over. And I wanted to end at the beautiful quote that you start your chapter with, that what lies behind us and before us is really tiny compared to what lies within us. So I've really enjoyed reading your story, your inspiration of finding what is within yourself, and can't wait for the book,